You're on there?
I'm on there. Anybody get that reference from the whole show from back in the 50s? Yes, we're that old. So I can start, yeah. All right, well, good evening, everybody. And welcome to the September edition of the Garden State Java User Group meetings. I hope all of you had a great summer. But now it's time to roll up the sleeves and, get some work done here. So, but we have a great set of talks tonight from Gerrit Grunwald from Azul and Ivar Grimstad from the Eclipse Foundation. So without further ado, let me get started on some of our usual slides. All right, so as usual, we'll thank our sponsors, talk about what's new, and there's a couple of exciting things that happened today in case anybody doesn't know. So I'm going to introduce Gerrit first, and then he'll give his presentation, and then afterwards I'm going to introduce Ivar. And then after Ivar's talk, we do our usual upcoming events, what our friends are doing, and then we'll have our giveaway of a license, or maybe two, of IntelliJ IDEA. And then we have a coveted micro-profile hoodie that we'd like to give away as well, since it is going to start getting cold. So, anyway, so let's continue. So we need to say special thanks to JFrog, the DevOps company, and they're our platinum sponsor. And of course, Azul is our silver sponsor. So thank you, Gerrit, and also Pratik Patel from Azul. And then our partner is DevNexus, and the DevNexus 2024 is April 9th through, I guess, the 11th or so of 2024 in Atlanta. The call for papers is open. So fingers crossed, mine will get accepted. And then we have our per meeting sponsors. JetBrains, of course, they send us a coupon for license of IntelliJ IDEA every month. And then, of course, Eclipse Foundation and Jakarta EE, they provide crowdcast hosting for Java user groups. So what's new? Well, big news today. Anybody know what's the big news, other than if you don't look at this? This was huge. This is Java 21 is official today. And there was a big launch party by Oracle from 9 o'clock our time to 5. It ended at 5. So they had a lot of good things going on there. So these are all the JEPs that are part of that. I'm not going to read them. But if you go to InfoQ, there's, some author had posted something earlier today about that. So, and then along that too, GraalVM for JDK 21 was also released. About a year and a half ago, Oracle Labs has aligned with OpenJDK to produce, binaries for Java at the same time. So, and plus they also eliminated their enterprise, so everything is essentially free, I think. So, and then the microprofile JWT and Jakarta security interlock team, the specification has been approved. So this will make it easier for Jakarta security applications. And then you can use microprofile JWT along with that. So, okay, so enough of me talking. I had the website up. There we go. All right, so Gerrit Grunwald is a software engineer that loves coding for around 40 years. He is a true believer in open source and has participated in popular projects like JF Extras, as well as his own projects, TilesFX, Medusa, Enzo, Steel Series Swing, Steel Series Canvas, and JDKmon. So I follow JDKmon, and so I always put the updates in my weekly roundups. So, and then, so Gerrit regularly blogs at Harmonic Code and an active member of the Java community, where he founded and leads the Java user group Münster in Deutschland. So, of me being German descent, So, he is a Java 1 rock star, a Java champion, and a speaker at conferences and user groups internationally, and writes for several magazines. So I must say, first of all, for both for both Ivar and Garrett. They are making a, I guess, a 5-day tour of 5 different Java groups. They were in Columbus, Ohio yesterday. They're here today and they're going back to Detroit tomorrow. And I forget what the rest of the, so yeah, really appreciate your time and stopping here to see, to spend some time with us. So without further ado.
Thank you. No applause yet, right? So it's not done yet. Let me see if I can start that up. Okay. So does that work? Let me get rid of the window here. Can we get that out of the way? No, not really. Okay. Let me check. So yeah, first of all, thanks for having us. It was such a hassle to organize a JAG tour in the US. I have to say that, sorry, but I did that last year. It took me, last year I contacted 42 JAGs to make 5 sessions in a week. And this year it was not that many, but still it's so hard to get Monday, Tuesday, and all the days lined up. So, but we made it. Thanks to you guys that we can be here. So it's really cool. The session is Welcome to the Jungle, and it's about all these different JVM distributions that we have, and it should put some light onto all these things. So let me see if this thing works. No, it doesn't. Okay, let me do. Oh, wait, I had that yesterday. It's this one now. It should work. Yes. My name is Gerald Lumwald. I'm working for Azure as a senior developer advocate, also JAG leader, like Michael mentioned already. And I know what it takes to run a JAG, which is not always easy. So it's good to see people here in the room, because last year I had at Houston JAG, it was 1 person. Yeah, that was really worth the travel. Okay. The slides you can pick up here, but you can't see it right now because there's the image on top. Doesn't matter. If you would like to have the slide, just contact me. I will send it to you. It's not a secret. OpenJDK. So usually what I do is I first ask the people who runs in production on OpenJDK. I don't think so. Because OpenJDK, that's the interesting part. So we have often a booth at a conference, and then the people can use to ask them, so what do you use? Yeah, OpenJDK. Sure. OpenJDK is just the GitHub repository with the source code. That is OpenJDK. What you run is a build of OpenJDK, and that's a so-called distribution. That's a big difference, right? So it's a free and open source implementation of the Java Platform Standard Editions, or also Java SE. That's how we know it. And it has a website that you can find here, openjdk.org. Just it's all good. And because it's an open source project, you also find the source code in the meantime on GitHub. So it's here, github.com/openjdk/jdk. There you can dig into the code if you're interested in, and it is complicated. I can tell you that far. But it's available, so you can check out all the good stuff that is in OpenJDK. So because it's an OpenJDK project, this is not only one contributor, but this is more than one. And this is quite interesting when you see the list of contributors. This is the list of contributors to OpenJDK, which is a huge list. And I see there's still Twitter on there. Should replace it with an X. So it's, you see big companies like Amazon, IBM, ARM, and Google, Oracle, they all contribute to OpenJDK. And this is a good sign, because that means it's not a one-man show. So if you use a build of OpenJDK, you are on the safe side, because all these big companies have a big interest in running Java, not only now, but for the future. So it's good that we have so many big companies contributing to OpenJDK. And because it has this big project, it has a roadmap. And the roadmap is the release cadence, more or less. So, and this is the old one. JDK 6 was the first OpenJDK version that was available. And it took 4.5 years until we got to JDK 7. And then it took another 3 years to get to JDK 8. And then the problem is you had to wait multiple years before you can really play around with the new stuff. And if you run something in production, this was the first time when you can really, okay, now I have the latest JDK, now I have to try figuring out how this stuff works before we can really implement it in production. That can take another year or longer, right? So that was really not that great. The new release cadence is this. So we have every 6 months, we have a new release, and then there are different ones. I will come to that later on. But you can imagine that this is way better, right? Because now you can test a new release every 6 months before you go to production, which is really, really helpful.
We already have a question.
Yay!
On YouTube,
Yay!
and it is, Java LTS period changed to 2 years. Does Azul continue to support MTS?
No, MTSs have been.
Repeat the question.
I will come. Yeah, sorry. So the question was, we have the release cadence now switched to between LTS releases, but I will also cover that in the upcoming slides. I will cover it in the upcoming slides. It's better because I have a slide for that, right? So it was about MTS releases, which is, and I will explain what it means. Okay, now we can test JDKs every 6 months, which is great. And then there is this stuff that probably all people know, but still I have to repeat it because there are some things. We have the JDK, it's the Java Development Kit. And then we have the JRE, which is the Java runtime environment. And usually what I do is I ask people who runs a JDK in production. And it's no surprise that a lot of fingers go, yes, say why, all right? This is the JRE, this is the Java runtime environment. It contains the virtual machine and the class libraries, everything you need to run your application on your server, right? And then I have the JDK that contains the JRE, plus it has also the Java C compiler, it has a debugger, Java doc, and other stuff that you need for develop applications. So why won't you put this stuff in production? It's especially these days when you run in containers where you try to keep it small, you should really not use a JDK in production, right? So the recommendation up to JDK 8 is for development JDK, for production JRE, because the JRE is just smaller, right? When we take a look from JDK 9 upwards, you should use JLink builds instead of JREs. So JLink builds, this is a tool to create custom runtime images. They are tailored to your application. So that means there's a tool called JDEP or JDEPs. So this tool figures out all the dependencies that you use within the JDK, and then it creates, or you can use the output of JDEPs to create with using JLink a customized runtime just for your application. It will strip down the JDK to all the stuff that you really need to run your application, and it will get rid of all the other stuff that you don't need. So if you don't need any XML stuff, it won't be in your JRE or in your JLink runtime. So that means you can strip down the runtime version of Java furthermore than with the JRE. So you should use JLink. It was made for that. That's one of the reasons why we have the modularized JDK that came with JDK 9. So there are also still JREs, but the preferred way should be this one. And if I ask, does someone use JLink builds here? Probably not, because I never saw that someone really used JLink, which is a surprise. We have JDK release 21 today, and that came with JDK 9, and still people don't use it. They just
images, images for OpenJDK. Most people don't look at inside.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So I also get it that you get, if you use, yeah, so the thing is that if you have, if you download JREs, for example, then there's nothing like a JLink build, right? And it's also another effort that you have to put into to create these builds, and people are really just don't care about it. And the other thing is, if you, these days, you have Docker images that come with pre-installed JDKs or JREs, people just take it and run on that. Right, and then they complain that Java is so big, right? So you can make it smaller. If you take care about it, then you should use JLink. It's just to keep in mind that it is available. And then we have distributions, and this is what I mentioned already. This is builds of OpenJDK, and we have more. This is why I mentioned that explicitly. And we have all these builds of OpenJDK. And you find stuff that I've probably never heard of, like Bisheng, or there's also Kona from Tencent. Bisheng is from Huawei. This is not big in the Western world, but in the Asian world, this is huge. But we don't know that. I even didn't know that. So I stumbled upon the Tencent Kona builds, and then I figured out, oh, there's way more in Asia. It's also built of OpenJDK, and you see it's a lot. And you see this little crosses there. There is this one and that one. So adopt OpenJDK is dead. It died with 1702. So this is not a, oh no, with 1602. And from that moment on, they switched to Tamarin, which is not the same distribution. I have to make that clear, because this is adopt OpenJDK is not Tamarin. And it's a different distribution. You really have to, they claim it's the same. It's not, just to make that clear. OJDK build was the community build of the Red Hat JDK. And they stopped with 1702. So I guess the reason was that they internally, they now also use Tamarin. So they just don't do it anymore. And then we see different things like Semaru and Semaru certified. And I will come to that, why we have that twice on the list and other stuff. And there's Oracle OpenJDK. And if I would be correct, then I have to say Oracle OpenJDK JDK, because that's the name, which is totally weird, but that's the name. And then there's Oracle JDK. That's the stuff you have to pay for, right? So it's a lot of things. This is 20 distributions, right? Which is a lot. And then there's builds of GraalVM, right? So, and GraalVM is, there's, for example, Glue on GraalVM, which is made to run on mobile devices. Then there's GraalVM Community, which was formerly known as GraalVM CE. And there's just GraalVM, which was formerly GraalVM Enterprise. And there's Liberica Native Image Kit and Mandrel. Mandrel is from Red Hat, Liberica is from Bedsoft. And so these are all versions of GraalVM, where the only really different one is the GraalVM Enterprise version. This is different. All the others are more or less the same. But I also will come to that. So the question is which one to choose, right? If you start in a project, which JDK should you choose and why? So we need some differences here. What are the differences? We need to figure out. So I try to find some things that might make sense. So that's first of all, term of support. I will come to that. Then updates, compliance, cost, performance, and features. This might be the points that where you could make differences between these distributions. First of all, term of support. What does it mean? So there's STS releases or short-term support versions. And then there's LTS releases. Now I come back to the question, the first one, with the MTS ones. Because the MTS, this is not official, Azure came up with that, which was midterm support. And I will explain why that was available. So long-term support versions, LTS. Today, 21 is an LTS release, and the last one was 17, and before that it was 11, and before that it was 8. 8 was the first long-term support version. So these are all the JDKs from JDK 9. And you see the releases here. And then all the white boxes here, the white arrows, this is all STS releases, short-term support versions. And they are only 6 months in the field. After 6 months, there will be the next STS release or LTS. And then there is no support anymore for that one. So that means, for example, if you take a look at JDK 12, then there was 13, 14, 15, 16, and then was 17, right? That means if you need a feature in JDK 12, because there was something new, let's say J package, it came with JDK 12. So you need that stuff. So you say, okay, I need it. So we switch to JDK 12. Then what happens is 6 months later, there's JDK 12.01, then there's 12.02, and that's it. And then there's JDK 13. Which comes with new features, even if you don't want them. So you can stick to JDK 12 and say, okay, I wait to JDK 17, but this is a long time in this case. That means as long as you stick to JDK 12.02, you are vulnerable because with each version, there are no new vulnerabilities, right? So there was a security issue here. And then finally in 17, all the features from 12 to 16 came to 17, and then 17 contained all the stuff. So there have been companies, they waited from JDK 12 up to JDK 17, which could be 4.5 or 4 years, 3 years. It was 3 years roughly. And this is quite dangerous. And to avoid that problem, Azure came up with the idea, if we make this one 13 and 15, a midterm support version, and guarantee you, if you switch to 13, then we guarantee you support until 17, even a little bit longer. Then you could stick to the 13 one and just work with that until 17 is out, and we will support it. And then 15 was the same. it made sense because at that time we had 3 years between the LTS releases, but then Oracle decided to switch it to 2 years, and then it doesn't make sense to have a midterm support version. That's the reason why we don't have MTS releases anymore. It's also, I have a slide where I mentioned that, but it doesn't make sense because we don't do it anymore. And then we have the blue ones. These are long-term support versions. And from today on, Oracle announced that the JDK 11 will get support until 2032. This is the new long-term support. And this means extended support, so you have to pay for it, but at least you can have it. And you see 17 is September 2029, and then JDK 21, I don't know, I think it's 2030, something like that at the moment. But you see Oracle extend that from time to time, depends on how the demand is for these different JDKs. And then here you see it was 3 years between 11 and 17, and now it's 2 years. And for 2 years, we don't do the MTS releases anymore. So this is how it works. So that means we always have 3, from now on, always 3 STS releases before we get a new LTS. And the LTS have really long-term support in the range of years, and the STS only in the range of 6 months. And after that 6 months, if you don't switch, like I said, you're really running into problems. Okay, yeah, I said it already. STS releases only get updates for 6 months, LTS for years, right? So this is the big difference here. So this is the term of support. Important, not every distribution provides STS and LTS releases. For example, if you use Microsoft JDK, they only have LTS. That means you can get 17, then you have to wait for 3 years, and then you get, or 2 years, and then you get 21, and so on, right? Where others, for example, Azure and also Tamarind, they offer these STS releases in between. Right? Okay. Recommendation in development, whatever you like, but in production, please only use LTS releases if possible, because otherwise you have to switch every 6 months to make sure you get the latest security updates. And that leads me to updates, because there we have another thing which is probably unknown to most of you. There is a so-called CPU updates, which means critical patch updates, right? I don't know if someone heard about that. And then there's the so-called PSU, which is the patch set update. So how it works is the CPU update only fixes vulnerabilities and critical issues, nothing else. No new feature, nothing, right? And then we have the PSU. The PSU contains the CPU, and then it adds some stuff. So it adds, for example, fixes for non-critical issues, and it also adds new features. Well, and this can introduce new issues, right? This is why the one is the critical patch update. It's really for critical stuff, only security fixes and critical issues, where the PSU does that, plus it comes with non-critical fixes, and it also introduces new features. So, yeah, question.
So PSU is different from an SCL?
This is unrelated.
Why would there be a PSU?
Wait for the next slide.
Okay, all right,
Probably
okay,
it will explain
okay.
it, because it's quite complex. The problem is CPU updates are not freely available. And that's why you don't know it, because you only get it if you pay for it. And there are only 3 companies in the world that do that. It's Oracle, Azure, and Bellsoft. They do CPU updates. And you have to pay for that because it means additional effort, right? So they come 4 times a year, and I try to explain it. So when JDK 17 came out in September, then, so years ago, then we have in the upper line, we see PSU updates. In the lower line, this is CPU updates. And you see already the PSU contains the CPU, right? And in the bottom is just the CPU, just critical patches. So that was January 1701. Then in April, the next update came out, CPU and PSU. So the PSU contains a critical patch, fixes, and also additional new features, okay? Where the CPU, and this is now the interesting part, it only contains fixes from the last PSU. So that means you take this version and fix all bugs, critical issues in this one, and this is the next CPU. That means you get the features, but you're always 1 quarter behind, right? Because this contains the features from that version, where this has the new ones. And this additional time is used to fix issues. right? So that's the reason why these critical patch updates are not for free, because it means the companies that they provide it, they need to fix all this stuff and make sure that it only contains this stuff and not the new things. CPU is always 1 quarter behind, and then this goes on, right? So the next update, same. And with this, they can make sure that the CPU really is more secure than the PSU. That's a very important point. If you run mission critical stuff, then I would recommend using CPUs. That's the only reason why we have them. And so on. So we have it in January, April, July, and October. Okay. Does that answer the question?
Why would you introduce features in a PSU and not wait until the STL?
Well, now the problem is, yeah, so why would you introduce features in a PSU and not wait until the STL? Okay. So the reason is all the updates that you download from the web, when there is a new feature or security patch or whatever, this is PSU updates. Everybody does that. You don't wait because this is the way it works, right? So they just introduce, it's not the big features, but you see that there are small features they introduce. I have an example where this went totally wrong, right? So I will come to that on the next slide. So that hopefully explains it then. So CPU updates are 3 months behind PSU updates, but way more secure. And, oh yeah, that's also something I talked about already. PSUs are available from everyone. So everything you download, every new version, 1702, 1703, whatever, this is all PSUs, except you pay for it, then you get the CPUs, right? This is the difference. And yeah, I mentioned that also already. It's Azure Beds of Oracle who offers CPU updates. The reason why this is not on the website, because there is somewhere you will find we offer that, but you have to pay for it. It's nothing that you can download, right? So, and this is the reason why people don't know that. And that's the recommendation. Like I said, development, whatever you like. In production, if it's mission critical, you should really use CPUs, at least taking it into account. There was one example, and that was JDK 8. There are others, but with PSU 8U252, there was introduced a change, and with this change, Hadoop and Solr couldn't run anymore. That was a regular update, right? So you just download, install, and suddenly this doesn't work anymore. If you use the CPU, then it was the 251, then it worked, because this only contained the fixes from the 242, from the last PSU, right? So, and this is, it's a mechanism to make sure that even everything is tested in the PSUs, there can go something wrong, right? So whatever this issue was, what they introduced some changes, and that's the reason why they created the CPU updates.
So the PSU, now I've already forgotten, P stands for preview?
No, that's patch set update.
Patch, okay.
Yeah. And the others is the critical patch update.
Yes, you don't introduce any planning feature. Just some fixes for some special case.
It's not, the PSU doesn't contain huge features like virtual threads or something. This comes with new releases, right? But there are minor changes they do and improvements, right? So little things, but that can go wrong, as we saw here.
Oh, so the idea is to incrementally.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and the CPUs don't contain that. They always wait for the next one and then fix only the bugs. That's the idea behind it. And if you have let's say you have a banking application, a huge one, then you would like to make sure that everything's really running, because you don't want to run in that kind of problem, right? Okay, then the next thing that is compliance. And for bigger companies, this is an issue. And this is the so-called TCK. Probably, did someone heard about that? TCK, probably the Java champions and all that. So this is a technology compatibility kit. It's licensed by Oracle. And it was originally developed by Sun Microsystems, intellectual property and licensed by Oracle right now. And it contains more than 120,000 individual tests for JDK 11, for example. And these are tests that test the JDK itself. The implementation of the Java spec will be tested. So that means, for example, if you have virtual threads, TCK will make sure that these virtual threads work as expected on all the different platforms and architectures that we have. Or if we have records, TCK makes sure that it works as it should be, right? So, and any binary that is provided by a vendor, let's say if we provide a new version like today, JDK 21, we have to make sure that every binary that we create passes this TCK. Otherwise, we are not allowed to say this is Java SE compatible, and we can't say it passed the TCK test. You might want to ask yourself, okay, sounds weird. Why should we do that? Well, the reason for that is we saw 20 different distributions. Now, let's say you would like to change from, let's say, Corretto to Azul Zulu. How do you know that it will work? How can you make sure that, okay, if I switch the JDK, it still works? This is what makes sure that it works. The TCK, if both of them TCK tested, then you can make sure you can exchange the JDK without any problem. That's the reason why we have the TCK. On the other hand, means if you have a distribution that doesn't pass the TCK, you have to be careful when you switch to them, because that means there's something where they failed. Right? So your code can break at some point, and then you can't blame anyone because they said, no, we are not TCK compatible. So it's your fault if you run on this, right? And I have examples for that.
Okay.
Yes.
Quick question. So we talk about Jakarta, right? The way I understand it is that when Oracle created Java EE to Eclipse, right, that that the TCK was also part of it and was open source. Is that okay? But then we say licensed by Oracle for Java SE.
Mm-hmm.
Do like vendors like Azul and others have to pay?
No,
Like
I will come to that. So the question was if you have to pay for the TCK, and in general, no, but there are exceptions, and I will mention that on the next one, because it's not all the TCK. The TCK you have to think about is the whole suite, and it contains the Java compatibility kit. This is part of the TCK, and this is the important part, because these are the actual tests, right? So it tests features that are likely to differ across platforms of implementations. They rely on hardware operation systems. So that means if you have, for example, an implementation of a records, for example, should make sure that it works on a Mac on x64, the same as on a, or ARM, the same as on a Windows machine on x64. It should be the same. All this is in the JCK defined, right? Stuff that is difficult to port or mask abstract hardware behavior or operating system behavior. I have to add that if you would like to run the TCK test, it includes stuff like you need a sound card in your computer. You need a printer connected to it. You need a CD-ROM. You need a DVD-ROM. All these things, everything that can run by Java has to be connected to the machine. For every machine and every architecture and every operating system, you have to make sure that you have that. You can imagine what that means, right? You need every architecture, every operating system, and then you have to test all this stuff on all these machines to make sure that it really works. It takes a lot of time to do that. This is also the reason why Java, you can download and use it for free, but for some stuff you have to pay, because these companies somehow have to pay their own employees. They do all the tests, right, and run that. So how to access it? And that answers the question from Michael. So it's available at no charge. If you would like, you can go to the Oracle website, and then there's somewhere you will find it. And then you have to meet the OCTLA, which is the OpenJDK Community TCK License Agreement. Some paperwork you have to do. And if you do that, then there's another one, which is the OCA, which is the Oracle Contributor Agreement. You also have to sign that one. If you do that, you can get the TCK test, right? You can, or the whole TCK test suite. And then you can run it on your machine, and then you can leave it alone for a month. And then after that, it might be done. And then you can say, yes, my own distribution that I built from the source code is TCK compatible. Great. So this is how it works. And there are some exceptions, because, for example, and I will come to that also later on, there's IBM, and IBM has its own implementation of the JVM. So instead of using OpenJDK, they created their own one, which is OpenJ9. Right? This is not OpenJDK, but they would like to have the TCK compliance. So Oracle said, yeah, you can get it, you have to pay. IBM said, okay, we do that. We create two versions of Semaru, which is their JVM implementation. And there's just Semaru, that is free. It doesn't have the TCK license. And then there's Semaru certified, and you have to pay for that. And this has the TCK. So because the reason is that some companies say we only use your Java distribution if it has the TCK. agreement, if it's compliant to the TCK. So that's the reason why IBM did that, and they have to pay for it. That's also the reason why OpenJDK died in the end. First of all, it had the name OpenJDK in its name, and this is trademarked by Oracle, so they didn't like that. That was the reason why I said, you have OpenJDK in the name, you will never get the TCK. But they would like to have the TCK. So they joined the Eclipse Foundation and created Adoptium, and then they had Tamarin, and they get the TCK because now it's a different name. It's not OpenJDK anymore, so they can get it. So Oracle is a little bit picky. In general, it's free as long as you don't go in their way. And then this is the interesting part. You see, this is not as big of a list as it was before. This is TCK compliant JDK 8 distributions. And you see we have here 11, I think. And on this list, you see, for example, Dragonwell, right? And Bisheng. That means these two distributions pass the TCK. They're TCK compliant for JDK 8. And I mentioned that explicitly because for JDK 9 and above, you won't find them here. So that means, and that's the tricky part, even if the company like Alibaba says, yeah, Dragonwell, TCK compliant. Yeah, the JDK 8 version. JDK 11, no. So you have to be careful what you use, right? So it's really, that sounds quite artificial, this whole thing. But I told you already, and there's a reason, I will explain it later, why Dragonwell doesn't get the TCK for JDK 11. They implemented something that breaks a TCK test. So, and that's the reason why I don't get it for JDK 11. So it means if you run with your application in that problem, then your application will break. So there's a reason for the TCK compliance. But you see most of the big ones, they all have TCK compliance, which means you can exchange these distributions and it should work. There shouldn't be any problem, right? Okay, there's another test suite which comes from Eclipse that came with the whole Adoptium thing, which is called Aquavit. And it's not the alcohol. It's Adoptium Quality Assurance, Vitality, and Speed Test Suite. So what it is, it ensures that all additional qualities are present that make it suitable for production use. So where the TCK tests the implementation of the Java spec in your distribution, make sure that Java itself works. Aquavit makes sure that it works, that the performance of applications is good on that distribution, right? So they just added an additional test suite, and it's a collection of over 350,000 tests that they run on the distribution. And it's designed to test real-world utilization patterns. So, yeah, it's okay. It's a durability test and security and all these kinds of things. This is the list of Aquavit compliant JDK distributions. You see, it's just 5. And this is for JDK 8 again. Because to get Aquavit compliance, to become Aquavit compliance, you need to pass the TCK. So if you don't have the TCK, you will never get the Aquavit. So it's like a step further on the TCK. And then for JDK 11, we also have just 5. These 5 are Aquavit certified, right? And you can get them from the Adoptium marketplace. There's a website where you can download these distributions. And you see there's Samaru certified. That's the one from IBM, which is not OpenJDK. I listed it as OpenJDK distribution because it's quite similar. It uses the same spec, but it has different features. Okay, the recommendation in development, whatever you like. In production, make sure you use a TCK compliant JDK, which is not that hard because most of the big ones are TCK compliant. Cost. Yeah. There are 2 things. We have the free versions, right? And we are all so used to free software. And then this is all free. You can use it in production if you like. There is a little asterisk here, the Oracle JDK, because they play around with licenses, right? So you can use it for free if you download Oracle, for example, JDK 17 and onwards. You can use it in production for free for 3 years. As soon as the next JDK LTS release comes out, and this is today, that means the last one was 17. If you download 17 from Oracle and you use it for free in production, which is fine, next year in October, you have to pay for it. Because then they change to the OTN license, and that means it's very expensive, right? So you have to be careful with this kind of things. So if you use Oracle, please read the terms and conditions because this is a tricky stuff. GraalVM, same thing. If you use GraalVM, not the community edition, but the enterprise version, which you can download now for free and use in production, yay, but only for 3 years. And then you have to change. Otherwise, you have to pay Oracle, right? All the others you can use for free in production. So this is all stuff that you can use for free. Then, of course, there are some versions that are not free, right? There's our own one, which is Azure Platform Prime. I will explain why this is not for free, and you hopefully will understand why. This is the licensing is based on number of vCores. Then there's IBM Samaru certified, and I explained it already because the TCK, they have to pay for it. GraalVM, and this is interesting because Oracle changed the license, how they calculate the cost for the Java SE license, and GraalVM includes that. Instead of using vCores that they did before, now they say we base it on the number of employees of your company, and not only your employees, but also third-party companies that deliver stuff to you. Those employees too. If you have a company of 10,000 people, 5 of them use Java, you had 5 licenses before, let's say, and then suddenly you have to pay for 10,000. So this is really something you have, and this, it's not that easy. It's a more complicated, but this is a very simple version of it. So again, if you use something from Oracle, just make sure that you read the terms and conditions carefully, because it can get really expensive with this new calculation. Yeah, same for Oracle JDK. It's also not for free. It is for free for 3 years, and then it will fall back to this OTN license, which is where you have to pay for it. Performance, that is something most of the people always look forward to that. Now it's the interesting thing, which is the fastest one. Yeah, great. There's a baseline performance, and all of these are the same. Yay. There are minor differences, but it's really, because of the same source code, what do you expect? It's all OpenJDK. So this stuff doesn't matter what you use. The performance is more or less the same. Some might be, especially the Samaru things from IBM, because this is a different implementation. So they can be a little bit different, but most of it is the same. And I also, because you can use GraalVM to run Java, right? If there's a Java compiler, the speed is also more or less the same. So this is really not a big difference. So it doesn't really matter which one you use, except you are up for milliseconds. Okay. So yeah, more or less the same with some exceptions. Then we have high performance applications where you really need other JVMs. And therefore we have to take a short look at the JVM itself to get a better understanding. So the JVM, it has 3 big parts with the class loading, JVM memory, execution engine. I don't go through all that things because Ivar also needs some time for his session. So that's all the stuff in the different parts. And the interesting part is the execution engine. that contains the interpreter, the JIT compilers, the profiler, and the garbage collectors, and then some other stuff. So we will just focus on the execution engine, because that one has 2 parts, which is the JIT compiler and the garbage collector that you can exchange with other stuff, right? So that means if you write your own compiler, you can plug it into the JVM and use that compiler instead of the C2 or C1 compiler. So that's what we do. This is the reason why Platform Prime is not for free, because we wrote our own compiler, which is faster than the C2 compiler, and we have our own garbage collector. And that's the reason we plug that into the JVM, and that makes it much faster than the original OpenJDK builds. The other one is Oracle GraalVM, the Enterprise Edition. This is also quite fast. So it's faster than the Oracle OpenJDK or all the OpenJDK distributions. So these are the 2 only ones. If it comes to high performance, then you have to take these into account. But like I said, GraalVM, be careful with this stuff. And this is only GraalVM Enterprise, not the Community Edition. This is way slower than the Java OpenJDK distributions. And now we will just take a look at some features, because we have all these different distributions. Doesn't mean that they don't come with some add-ons, right? So you can have an OpenJDK build and still add some stuff to it, right? Amazon Corretto, Snapstart. Does someone use that in the room? Some people use that, especially with Lambdas. So this is a faster startup through Crack, which we invented 3 years ago already. And they saw that last year at DevOps UK and said, oh, this is cool because this can really fix the Lambda startup time in AWS. And then they created a little bit different version of it. They use micro JVMs and they call it Firecracker, but they use the same API implementation that we use for Crack. Alibaba Dragonwell, and now I will explain to you why this is not TCK compliant in JDK 11. This is made for the Alibaba Cloud, which is similar to AWS. So this is their JDK. They have two different versions. They have the standard and extended edition, and they have JWarmup, right? JWarmup is a nice idea that Azul had a couple of years back, where we thought if the compiler, when it does all the compilations, just can save the compilation somewhere and then store that. And the next time you start the application, instead of doing interpretation and compilation and all that, just take from the file the hints, like you have to compile it like this and do that. Then you can really get to the fully warmed up JVM way faster, right? So we tried that and did it in an OpenJDK project. And Alibaba, they saw that and said, oh, this is cool, we take it. And then we switched to our own compiler because it was not possible to do that in the C2 compiler. This is the reason why they failed the TCK test. The prime JVM that we have with our own compiler, we use the same technology, it's called Ready Now. And there it works, and we pass the TCK, but that's the reason JWarmup breaks the TCK, which was the reason why we also switched to a new compiler. Then they have Elastic Heap. This is a technology to give back memory to the operating system. And then there's WISP2. To be honest, I don't have any idea. It's a stack full symmetric coroutine at JVM level, whatever that is. They implemented it. And the problem with Alibaba is it's Chinese. So my Chinese is not that good. So I tried to read it and used Google Translate, but it was something. I couldn't understand it. Then there's Tencent Kona. I mentioned that already. This is also from China, and Tencent is huge. It's a really big company, and they have their own implementation, and they are specialized on ARM. So their JDK distribution is for embedded, mainly for embedded devices. And what they do, they implemented Kona fibers. And that is in principle Loom, so virtual threads, but they do that already in JDK 8 and 11. This is already available for more than a year. And it's faster than Loom, which is interesting. So they have benchmarks on their website where they show that fibers are faster than Loom. So they are better. And they do that on ARM. Because for them, this is really helpful because embedded devices like ARM devices are really restricted in hardware. So that means CPU power and memory. So they do everything to make that as fast as possible, and this helps a lot. And they also implemented ZGC, which is a garbage collector that also came with JDK 21 today. And they did that for ARM, so they did the implementation. So they are really focused on ARM, and they are big in that space. So if you're running on embedded, then you should take a look at this one. Bells of Liberica. This is a build of OpenJDK that comes bundled with JavaFX if you like. You don't have to, but you can get it with JavaFX. Is someone using JavaFX here? Probably not. Yeah, that's what I thought. But yeah, this is one of the distributions that come with that. And then there's Bells of Liberica NIC, which is Native Image Kit. This is a GraalVM implementation of Bellsoft. And they bundle GraalVM with JavaFX. This is the only distribution that does that when it comes to plain GraalVM, right? So this is not for mobile, this is only for desktop. If you create native desktop applications and would like to create them, then you can do that with Liberica NIC using JavaFX. That works. Yeah, like I said, native desktop apps you can run with Bells of Liberica NIC. Then there's Glue on GraalVM. This is mainly built for mobile. And if someone is interested in that, I have some mobile apps on my phone that I created with JavaFX because people say it's slow, it's not. This comes bundled with JavaFX, and you can do native desktop apps, Android apps, iOS apps, and also embedded apps. So I didn't mention that here. Then there's Oracle GraalVM, which is interesting. There are two different versions, Community and Enterprise Edition. And it's a polyglot VM. It doesn't only support Java, but also Python, R, JavaScript, and Ruby. And it has the GraalJIT compiler. So they also exchanged the C2 compiler in the JVM, in the execution engine, with their own implementation, which is more or less a rewrite of C2 in Java. And the reason for that is it's better to maintain. So the C2 is really hard to maintain. It's old code. It was started by Sun. It's good, but it's really hard to maintain it. So the reason to do it, make it more maintainable. That was the reason for the GraalVM compiler. And it comes with the AOT compiler. That is the stuff that creates the native images, right? So native executables. IBM Samaru, I mentioned that already. Community and certified edition because Oracle likes the money. And yeah, they have their own JVM implementation, which is called J9. It has a faster startup and the memory footprint is lower with if you use OpenJ9. So there are some advantages. They also have an AOT compiler. It doesn't create native images like the GraalVM one, but this is made for, they figure out which code is used often. They pre-compile it as AOT and accelerate the startup by that. So it's an interesting way of getting faster startups. They have instant on, which is checkpoint and restore on the JVM level, which is the same that Crack does in the OpenJDK. They name it instant on. It's exactly the same. And they have a JIT server. So that means you can decouple your server. It means the JDK compiler from your application more or less. You run the compiler on one machine and then all the services can use the compiler, right? So just one compiler, it keeps all the code and it comes back with the already compiled code. But they only can do it on one machine. Okay, then there's Azul Zulu from our side, which also comes in a version where you have JavaFX bundled if you like. And it has also Azul vulnerability detection. So that means, does someone run security scanners in production here? So I mean, something like Sneak or Black Duck or something like that in production. Probably. Yeah, you run it in production or in? Yeah, exactly. So this is exactly what happens. So people run security scanners, which is good. They run it in development. They run it on their repositories and they run it in CI/CD and then they trust that everything's good in production because you can run it in production, but usually it's done by agents and agents just attach to the JVM from the outside. It's an application that just sits there and asks the JVM, oh, by the way, anytime you load a class, let me know. So that means every time the JVM starts loading classes, it tells this agent, hey, I loaded a class, and then the agent can look up something. That's how it works, very simple. And we thought, if you can do that, why the JVM knows what it loads, right? So why can't the JVM just tell you from time to time, you know what, I loaded these classes, just check them up. And then you have something like, we call it forwarder, that goes to the internet and checks everything for you. So that means the overhead is not there because it's in the JVM. The JVM knows exactly what it loads. Another advantage of that is we can tell you the code that you loaded and used. So now the JVM can do that. So you can ask the JVM, give me all the code that I loaded, and even better, give me the code that I don't use. So we can tell you, you know what, you have here some pieces in your code you never touch. You run the application now for months. You never touch that code. Are you sure you need it? Maybe you can get rid of it, right? Stuff like that is possible. And we can also tell you if you use vulnerable code, which is a different stuff. The CI/CD scanners, they can scan the jars. And then they can look up and say, oh, look, there's log4j, this is vulnerable. You shouldn't do that. Okay, we do the same, but we can tell you if you really use log4j, because if the JVM never loads the class, you might have a dependency, but if you don't use it, then we tell you, you know what, you use a vulnerable library in your dependencies, but you never load it. So you're still safe, right? So we can do that. And we have crack, right? Not the drug.
Do you have ecstasy?
No, not yet. We are working on that. We can talk about that later. So it's really interesting. So what we do is you think about, you have the JVM, you run your application, and at one point you decide, you know what, no, I touched every piece of my application, so it's warmed up. I create a checkpoint. So you store the whole JVM, including your application, and save it on the disk. And then you can restore exactly at that point. And this is in milliseconds. So we can restart a JVM within 30 to 50 milliseconds. And it's completely warmed up, right? So and you decide when to do the checkpoint. This is correct. And then we have Azure Platform Prime, and that comes with all the bells and whistles. So it has our own compiler, which is up to 50% faster than the OpenJDK compiler. It has our own garbage collector, which is even better than the ZGC generation that we saw today in JDK 21. This is even faster, and ZGC is based on the paper that we offered for this one. This is publicly available, so it's the same. We have ready now. This is the stuff that stores all the optimizations in a file and then tells the compiler, just do this and don't do all the interpretation stuff. We have a cloud native optimizer. In principle, think about you have the compiler. So the JVM runs in the cloud in a cluster, and then you have all your services. And every time you try to compile code, you just ask the compiler. It compiles it for you once. The next time someone asks for the same code, it just gives it to you, highly optimized. So you don't have to compile locally. That can even improve startup time and runtime. We have also the vulnerability detection in there, and we will get cracked. So it has everything, which is the reason why you have to pay for it, because it takes some time to create this compiler and the garbage collection ready now and all that. We have to develop that. That's the reason why it's not for free. This is for high performance applications mainly. So you don't want to run your local application on that one. It doesn't really make sense. So the takeaway, and I hope I'm not really too much over time, I'm a little bit, right? Are all those builds of OpenJDK really different? Technically, no, it's all the same, more or less. Service support cost, that's a difference. So you have to really think about before you choose a JDK, because what you choose today might have an impact later on the people that follow in your projects, right? So this is it. So choose wisely when you select the JDK. And with this, I say thanks for listening. And I have announced this book, which Simon Ritter, my colleague, wrote. And I have 2 really hard copies of that. And it was hard to get them because we usually don't do it. If you follow that link, I think you have to sign up with an email, if I'm right, I'm not sure. And then you can get the PDF and download for free, but I have 2. So if there are questions, the first question will get one and the second one will get one. So, and with this, I say thank you. And now I'm open for questions.
Questions from YouTube.
Okay.
I will defer the books to other people who are here.
Okay.
All right, so I won't ask them in order. One of them is, correct me if I'm wrong, but a set of components is not the same. For instance, Red Hat has Shenandoah, but Shenandoah GC, but Oracle doesn't.
That's correct.
I think you answered that during your.
Yeah, that's in principle the same as we do with, you can exchange the garbage collector. That's features. It won't break the TCK if you do that. So you can exchange stuff in the JDK as long as it passes. It's fine. And that's right. Shenandoah is only in the Red Hat because it's a Red Hat development, right?
Okay. And again, repeat this question. What do you think about compiling Java to WASM?
What do I think about it?
And it said, and it goes on to say, I work J2CL Maven plugin. It works, but I'm not sure it has any value.
I have myself a good friend who works on exactly on the same thing. He also wrote his own compiler. The question was what I think about compiling Java to WASM. I think it's quite interesting. So it could make a difference in the future. At the moment, I don't think we are there. But yeah, keep working on that. So like I said, my good friend of mine does the same. And he gave sessions about it, and he always got good feedback. So there might be the future for that.
Okay, and there's one more. And if you don't want to take this, we've got somebody in the room who will.
Okay.
Are there any updates about Oracle certification exams? He says, I want to renew my OCE.
I'm the totally wrong person to answer that question.
The right person here. Scott, what do you say?
I was distracted for the last part of that.
All right.
You want to wait with the questions about service?
Are there any updates about Oracle certification exams?
Oh.
I'm not going to answer them.
Our expert says he's not answering it.
So I'm going to answer that.
Sorry about that.
The answer is maybe.
So you can repeat that.
So the answer is maybe. Okay.
That's
So,
right.
The answer is maybe. I can't give you any definitive beyond that.
okay. So the expert was not able to give us a definitive answer because it's maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Sounds like he could tell you, but then you have to.
I think so.
Actually, I could tell you, but whatever I will say will probably be declared wrong like 24 hours or like.
That's how it
up in
is.
the air is a better way to
Yeah. Good point. So are there any other questions? And if not, then I just leave the books here. And if someone who would like to have it, then just grab it because I only have 6 of these books. 1 for me, 5 for each Jack. I forgot it yesterday, so we have 2 today. And they are really rare because you can't buy them as paperbacks. So we just have a couple of them. So If you like paperbacks, then this is your chance. No questions? Then feel free.
Thank you.
It was a lot of stuff and not that much interesting for everyone, but sometimes it's good to know what's out there.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's
It was,
good.
absolutely. So yeah, thank you, Garrett. That was,
Do you need the machine?
no, not until after.
Well, why don't you get in front of it so they can see?
Oh,
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll just leave it on. So you-
Anyway, yeah, so when I wanted to, when Adopt OpenJDK went to Adoptium and you had the Temurin, which is an anagram of runtime, by the way. But, for when I was writing my InfoQ articles, I wrote it as turmeric, thinking of turmeric, which, obviously is a spice. So I think one of the other Java editors on InfoQ corrected me quickly on that. So I made that change. That's always a hard one for me. So anyway, yeah, so there might be pizza left. Please.
Vegetarian, I think.
Is it? Yeah,
I think
okay.
that's the-
So yeah, and then we have, I forgot to mention earlier, we have coasters, hot off the press. If anybody, there's only a couple there, but I have a total of 50. So if they're not there, please come see me. We have the luggage tags from Oracle from last week's event. So, and then some other stuff here. So, I'd like to introduce now Ivar Grimstad. He is a recording.
I think you need to stop sharing.
He's a Java champion and JUG leader in Sweden. And besides advocating for the Jakarta EE technologies, Ivar is contributing to the Jakarta EE specs. I think MVC is one of yours, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so as well as being the PMC lead for the Eclipse Enterprise for Java, EE4J, that's the incubating projects, which by the way, there's a new one called Epicero, I believe, which is a compatible implementation for Jakarta authentication.
Yeah.
Or authorization. I think.
One of them.
Okay, so anyway, that's hot off the press. That's just getting started on that one. So, oh yeah, he's also one of the spec leads for Jakarta MVC, as I just mentioned, and represents the Eclipse Foundation in the JCP Executive Committee, which the meeting was last week in New York. Ivar is also involved in MicroProfile, the working group, just like the Garden State Java group is, Apache NetBeans, and a wide range of other open source projects and communities. He's a frequent speaker at international developer conferences. So Ivar, come on up and take it away.
Okay, let me stop sharing and then you. So you will connect to the Zoom?
I'm in a Zoom, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So you're
Then I
gonna
can-
have to sign in. Here's that for.
I just leave the meeting because he's
Yeah.
on. But you have to make him the host that he can share the screen.
Oh, I will do that.
Just. So, yep. Put the books over there.
You can share the screen now and.
Yeah.
Video on and.
And
Audio.
sounds audio online as well. Okay. Where's the? So dark, I can see where it is. There you go.
They tried, I always thought they did, they do not.
It may depend on the scene.
Where is power out?
I don't know, if, I don't, some of these work, some don't.
So if I look around, I might actually find one that works. All right. So I'll just see. Okay, I hope. Okay, sure, yeah, there. I'll try to see it. So welcome to this talk on Jakarta E10. I called it Modern and Lightweight Cloud Applications because that's kind of the motto around Jakarta E10. I'll do a lot of code demos. I'll ask a little whether this is interesting or not, and maybe skip some of them, but the plan is to do a lot of code. These are my social media credentials. My name is Ivar Grimstad. I'm the Jakarta EE developer advocate at Eclipse Foundation. If you want to connect with me after this meeting or during the coming years, feel free to connect me on any of these channels. I'm usually pretty responsive. So this talk is about Jakarta E10. So who in the room here are using any version of Java EE or Jakarta EE? A couple. How many of you are using Spring or Spring Boot? The same, more or less, yeah. So this is new for many of you. So luckily I'll go through a bit of it before we dive into the code. So Jakarta EE is all about specifications. And when we talk about specifications in our kind of field, we're talking about a specification document that describes the technology in words, and an API artifact where we as developers, that's what we use when we program, when we code, when we develop using these technologies. And we have a TCK or test compatibility kit, which is the test suite that we test an implementation whether it fulfills all the requirements of the specification. And when we have at least one open source implementation, we can ratify the specification as a final specification. It has to be at least one open source implementation, but there can be more. And Jakarta EE is in itself a specification, but it's also a kind of a container of a lot of other specifications. So Jakarta E10 platform consists of all these specifications here, and all the blue ones were updated in Jakarta E10 from previous versions, and you can see there are lots of them here that were updated. The gray ones were deemed stable as they were, so they weren't updated for this release. And there's one new spec down in the corner called CDI Lite, and I get a little bit into that later. If we peel away the more enterprise-y versions of these specifications, we're left with something we call the Jakarta E10 web profile. And web profile has been with us since Jakarta or Java EE6, we great. And this is a subset of the platform that is more targeting traditional web applications. And if we take away all the webby and UI stuff there, we're left with a stack of specifications that are more targeting microservices or headless services, if you like. And that's the specifications that will help you create RESTful web services with all the JSON libraries back and forth with binding and stuff. And also the glue that keeps us all together. And this is what we call the Jakarta EE Core Profile. And Core Profile was brand new in Jakarta E10. So it's the first time we introduced a new profile since web profile. So let's go through a couple of these specifications, just see some of the new things that were coming there. In security, we added some couple of new features and evolving the API. That's kind of the key around this specification. There's a lot of restructuring of the underlying specification, like authorization and authentication that was mentioned. And the big new feature they added here was standard support for OpenID Connect. So previously we had support for OpenID Connect in various vendor-specific ways, but now we have a standard way that is portable across all the implementations. And the rest was kind of a foundation for future works, that was work in the authorization and authentication specification that are kind of part of this trio of specifications, which are authentication, authorization, and the security API. And the OpenID Connect authentication mechanism is defined by this very nice annotation here, easy to, at least if you have code completion, but it's fairly long, but it's very precise what it does. And there are lots of parameters here you can use to configure this in a way on your server. So you don't have to write any configuration files or anything, you just do it in code. If we look at persistence 3.1, what they also did was adding features and evolving the API. That was kind of the theme for TAM. Just adding stuff that had been lying around for a while, and they wanted to start doing it now. And one thing that is very requested by the community was UIDs as basic Java types. So you can use UIDs in your entities without using the conversion back and forth from string to UID and back. So now it's supported. You just use the UID in your fields, and you're good. The implementation will take care of the transformation for you. For RESTful web services, they also did the updates of requested features, but they had a strong focus on maintaining compatibility because they initially wanted to do a 4.0 release where they were planning to break some things because they wanted to go from their own kind of injection stuff to using CDI fully. But they decided on staying on a 3.1 release where maintaining compatibility was the main topic, but also do some new features. And one of the requested features was standard support for multi-part form data. So you can upload and download files in a standard way, which you could have done with the REST-easy or Jersey before in a non-standard way, but now you can do it in a standard way. The other thing they added is it's actually a pretty cool thing, and I'll demo this one. That is support for Java SE Bootstrap. So you can bootstrap a Jakarta REST application from Java SE without using an application server. So you can just use the REST API directly there. And I'll create a very simple demo here that would just write out a greeting in the browser and using JSON binding and Jakarta REST for this. So the code for this it's all on GitHub. I'll give you the links to the repository afterwards. But the first thing we're going to look at is the POM file. And what you can see here is, first of all, it's in this case I'm using Java 17. I'll upgrade that later, but I'll start with 17 here. And I'm using a shade plugin to bundle this as an executable jar. You can do whatever mechanism you find suitable. I used shade here because I just found it on the internet, but you can do anything. And I'm using the Jakarta REST API 3.1. As well as, since I'm bootstrapping this without an application server, I also have to provide the implementation. So I'm providing the REST-easy implementations for REST, for the web server, and the JSON binding that Red Hat has provided for REST-easy. And that's it. So it's not a lot of stuff you need to add, but if you want to do more features of Jakarta, you have to add the implementations here. So that's kind of the drawback of this approach, that you will end up in these dependencies that will kind of remind you of how Spring Boot is. Lots of dependencies. But for simple application like this one, it's absolutely doable. So it's just a simple record, a REST resource that returns this record, and I have the application, which is the Jakarta REST application, where it's configured by extending application, and it has an empty application path. That's how you configure a Jakarta REST application. So I could bundle this in a war if I wanted, and just drop it into an application server, and it would run. But in this case, I bundle it as a jar. So let's do this. And the thing I'm going to do is to add a main method. So I have a main entry point to my jar file, and in the main method I'm going to add an application, and that is just instantiate myself, since I have a main method in the configuration class. The next thing I'm going to do is to configure this one, and there are lots of configuration options there. But what I'm doing, I'm just setting the root path and the port. But you can do a lot more, but this is kind of the minimum. And the last thing I'm going to do is simply start the application. And here, since I'm, I just have to add the interrupted exception to this one. So this is how you do it. It's these three things: create the app, configure it, and start it. So let's run this one. So first I'll just package it, and when it's packaged, I'm going to run it. And you see it starts fairly quickly, and I can open the it on localhost, and you see it displays what you're going to do. But you notice I was using Java 17, and today is maybe the only day in the year you're not allowed to use 17. You're supposed to use 21, right? So let's see how this works with 21. So what I'm going to do then is simply to go to the compiler plugin. I think I thought I had here. No, I have to add a compiler. That was the damn thing that I lost that, but at least we have to up this to 21. But I also have to have the enable preview features, because it's not a part of 21. It's a preview feature of 21. So I have to add the compiler plugin. So if I just come to remember this, that's the only thing I didn't create a live template for. So help me if I type it wrong now. So it's root ID, and it's let's take the artifact ID first. I think it helps me there. Maybe compiler. Should I have taken this in the
Anybody using it?
there? Yeah. Who's using that? So, and this was org Apache Maven plugins, and I think the version should be 3.8. I think 3.8.1 should be good. Or should I use the later one? I'll use the latest. There we go. And then I have to configure this. And I think, do you remember how I set these options? Is it parameters?
I just know that you're very brave for trying
Damn.
The 381, because you have. If you make it work, you'll be my hero.
311 is okay, but I want.
It's the smallest little thing, just all.
Yeah.
Well, especially when it comes to the preview features that.
Yeah, it could be that I have to enable preview. I think there are 3 parameters, but I could try to just go back in history and see if I can find it, but there's probably someone on YouTube that can help me. But parameter, is it enable preview or something like that?
I usually read a month right after the first version.
Yeah, but this is on the first day. So you know what? I'll do enable preview.
I should know what that is.
Preview. So let's see if we can find something that can help us. We'll actually take and copy the configuration element here. So I was almost at it, I think. So let's do this. There we go. So we enable features, but it's not it's 21. So we enable preview here. And then let's see if this compiles. So at least it compiles, and when I run it, I have to use enable preview in the file, and it does. And when we can do this, we can actually use some of the new preview features, and it probably this public static void main. That's kind of stupid, isn't it? So let's take that away, and use the new simplified main. So like this. So I have to have the interrupt exception, and I cannot use unnamed classes because it is a named class in my jar file, and I have to start it. So in this case, this is as simple as I can get the main. But you see, I get rid of probably static at least. So this is 21 preview features, and if we're lucky, it will still respond there. So yeah, it works. Yeah, let's hope the other demos are less eventful, but. Yeah, so core profile I mentioned is yes.
Yeah, while we're between demos, how do you perform bean lookup? I use glass. I need my glasses. I use class graph, and I can't say it's very fast. That's the question.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand the question. I can maybe take it offline afterwards.
Okay, sure.
But yeah, bean lookup. I'll show how we do inject beans and stuff in the next demo. So core profile is targeting smaller runtimes, and the stack is fairly few amount of specifications, which is what you need to create the simple web service. It's sort of the kind of specifications added in the SE Bootstrap example. So that's kind of the boundary of these kind of application you do that. So for Jakarta EE Core Profile compatible products right now, we have these 4. And to be honest, these were maybe not the 4 we were aiming for when we created Core Profile, because the runtimes we're really kind of interested in are the one with kind of follow a smaller footprint from the get-go, and like Helidon, Quarkus, Micronaut maybe, or others in that kind of range. They are potentially Jakarta EE Core Profile. I know Helidon is very close. I know Quarkus passed the CDI Lite TCK, so they could do it. It's just a matter of they have to file the results of the TCK and get the compatible logo. And one of the key specifications of Core Profile is CDI Lite. And with CDI Lite, that's what we kind of move it to be designed to work in more restricted environments. And with restricted environments, we mean the AOT compilers. So CDI is dynamic of nature and does a lot of reflection stuff. It does a lot of dynamic stuff on lookups on startup of your application or application server. So what they've done with CDI Lite is to move that dynamic stuff to compile time. So it can be resolved there and then be compiled to native using GraalVM. And that is to be able to do that, they've created a new extensions API that is not as portable as before, but it's fairly portable. It's at least portable, the stuff you can resolve at build time. So it's almost a drop-in replacement for the portable extensions. And they also changed the behavior of Beans XML. And I think that was more or less, they had to do it to get it work, but it was a little accident that they were actually allowed to do it because we broke things that in a way we shouldn't have, but it's there. So this is a demo that is more suited for those on older versions of Jakarta EE and want to move to 10. And the first step of moving from 8 to 10 is to move it from 8 to 9. And the reason why I say that is a good idea is because the Jakarta 9, the only change there was a namespace change. And that's kind of the hurdle you have to get over. If you move directly to 10, you're gonna discover some more changes in the API. It's not much, but it could be. The next step would be to move from 9 to 10. I thought since we're at an adventurous loop here, I'll do all the way from 8 to 10 and a little bit beyond. in one step. And the big thing is the JavaX to Jakarta thing. And this is actually important for Spring developers as well. And actually all the other talks on this tour is me doing a Spring application migration from Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3, because then you get this JavaX to Jakarta namespace problem as well. And you get it even more difficult because with Spring, you have so many dependencies. And dependencies is a problem with this. The transitive dependencies that are not under your control, that's where this gets difficult. In your own source code, it's not that hard. So Spring relies a big deal of Hibernate ORM, Hibernate Validator. It's used extensively in Spring. All Spring Boot applications, if you just use the default, will use Tomcat. Maybe you switch to Jetty, maybe you switch to something else, but all of these are servlet containers, and servlet is on the Jakarta namespace, so you got to switch. You could do this on bytecode level by using transformation tools, such as the Eclipse Transformer or the Apache Tomcat migration tool, or other options out there that will actually take your jar or war file, your Java classes, and transform the bytecode over for you automatically. And these tools are pretty powerful and good to use. The IDEs offer you some support. In IntelliJ, you have this Java EE to Jakarta namespace refactoring. I'll demo that in a second. You can use Open Rewrite. They have lots of templates for Jakarta there. I know at least IBM is contributing a lot to this, so these are very useful. I think they can do the bytecode as well. If you do it manually, which is what I'm going to do here, what you do is update all the Jakarta EE versions in your POM, then fix the imports, then fix the XML schema namespaces, and rename properties if there are JavaX stuff there, rename bootstrapping files if you have those, and verify data and dynamic contents. Since there are not that many, those who use Java EE or Jakarta EE, which versions are you on? Yeah, probably early. I'd do this very quickly, this demo. But there are some stuff I've got to do, because the application I've done here is still a hello world, but it's a little bit more advanced than the regular hello world, because I wanted to do an application that is kind of similar to what you would have in your organizations. And you'll probably have some database, some persistence mechanisms, some business logic layers, and some REST endpoints. The CDI extensions is probably a little bit overkill, so I'd drop those in this presentation. But this is kind of a fairly useful small application in any organization. So let's go through these steps very quickly in the application. Before I do that, I'll just run the application so you can see what we're dealing with. I'll just check if it's already running here. Yeah, so I have a Glassfish 5 running. That's on Jakarta EE 8. And this service here is saying howdy Jakarta EE 8. So that's the output of this application. We'll go through the code and see how it displays this text. And this application is called Complete Duke. We'll first look at the POM file. This is a war, so it's not a jar as the bootstrap was. It's on Java 8, which is very old, but that's usually where we start when you do these migrations. It's on Jakarta EE 8, which is also very old. Here you can see it's just a provider dependency and it's nothing more. And that's how a Jakarta EE application is. You don't have these long POM files with lots of stuff where there are security problems. This is a POM file, and that's kind of the strength of Jakarta EE. So I have the application is exactly the same as the bootstrap one. You see, this is how we configure a Jakarta REST application. There's nothing more to it. But no XML files or anything. This is all there is. I have a resource here. Just ignore the Duke sanitation. That's the CDI extension. I won't go into that now. You see, it's a path that's because it says hello in the URL. And here I inject an EJB, and this is how you do I don't know if that was a question on YouTube, but this is how you do a lookup to a local EJB in your application, just annotated with add
The question
EJB.
is, how's your dependency injection?
Yeah, so this is dependency injection of an EJB. I'll show dependency injection of the CDI being on the next class. But this is how you inject a EJB. It's the at EJB annotation. You can also use at inject. It's just like at order-wired in Spring. And my REST endpoint here is just calling this Duke service, which is the EJB. It's HTTP GET. It produces application JSON. Define greeting method, and this is how you do injection in CDI. It's add inject, and I inject the Duke's repository here. This Duke's repository has a find all method, and this is a business logic I have. You find all, string through them, and take the first one. So it's super advanced, right? And hard code if I can find anything. The Duke's repository is a just a Jakarta persistence, and this is kind of the third way of doing the injection in Jakarta. I inject the persistence context there, so that's kind of a context injection. They're a little bit special, but I inject the entity manager, and I can use criteria language here. And in the next demo, I'll go show you that in Jakarta 11 you don't have to learn this. So this is not complex, but it's kind of verbose and cumbersome to write. So in the next version you don't necessarily have to learn this. So look forward to that.
Jakarta data.
Yes. So that's the entire application. So let's upgrade this one, and I'll be tough since this compiler plugin went well. I'll drop 9 and go straight to 10. Right. So let's go to 10. And since I go to 10, let's also bump the Java version. And I think I'll stick on 17. I'll be a little wimp here, but let's stay on 17 for now, and maybe we try 21 later. But what you'll notice when I reload this is that I get a lot of compiler errors, and this is all the JavaX imports, right? Because now I've changed the version. I'm now on the JavaX namespace. So this is where tooling comes in. So I can go here and take the refactor, and I can migrate packages and classes, Java EE to Jakarta EE, and this will take everything and do the namespace migration for me, and it will omit the ones that are still in the JDK. So I don't want to do those that are already there. So it's because search and replace on all, that will just replace too much. And I just take this complete Duke application and do the refactor, and it fixes it everywhere. So now it's done. So it's not that hard in your own code. But it doesn't stop there. If you remember the slide I had, these was just the 2 first steps. So fix the imports, and after this one, we have XML schema namespaces as well, and these are not that obvious, but it's fairly structured anyway. So in the old days we used the jcb.org namespace for all these configuration files, and the only configuration file I have is persistent XML. So that's the one I'll change. And what we changed is that we've added HTTPS, and then we have replaced the jcb.org with Jakarta.ee. So that's what we've done. But we also had to do it all the way over to the schema location. So there are 3 places usually in an XML file. This can be done with search and replace. And there's one thing, and now I have a video over here. I don't know if you can see it, but that in Jakarta we usually use the version number in the file, so you can see what version of the spec this namespace is for, and so to make it very easy to see. And the one in Jakarta 9 was persistent 3.0. So I'll change to that one, and then you can see I get validation errors in this one, and that's because I haven't given it the correct version here. Right, so So that is something you need to do in all your XML files. Then I have a step here, rename properties prefix with JavaX. And in my application, I have only 2 of these properties, and these are actually in the same file. You can see JavaX persistent schema generation, and this is to generate my test data here. And these are prefixed with JavaX. So any properties you have prefixed with JavaX needs to be prefixed with Jakarta. So this is a very simple search and replace as well. Oh, and these migration tools, the Tomcat and these others and OpenRewrite, these will take these files as well. So you don't have to do this manually, but you have full control if you do it manually. But if you use tools, they will do much of this for you. So this one this is convenient for if you're testing a Jakarta application, because this one does a drop and create and then inserts test data. So this configuration is maybe not for production. Not always. It could be, because it could be some configuration data that is fairly static and you just want to flush the database for this one, but that table. But and in my case, I also have this verified dynamic and data and dynamic content, and I'll show you why this comes in. And that is if I now take this application here, I stop the Glassfish. And I start Glassfish 708, which is the latest version. I installed it this morning in my hotel on the Wi-Fi there. So it went well. I didn't start it though, so let's see if it works. And I deploy this application. Maybe I have to start it first. Yeah, so it's up and running. It seems like it's doing something. So let's see if it answers. And this one I think is on, it's not on 8082. I'm on 8080 on this one. And oh, it crashed. And this is because I was tough and I did go from 8 to 10, because this would have worked in 9. Remember what I said, we screwed up in 10 with CDI, right? So we need in 8 or 9, it wasn't that picky on having a beans XML file. It kind of meant if you didn't have a beans XML file, it meant that you had an empty. It was kind of treated the same way. And an empty beans XML file meant that everything is injectable. In 10, we changed the default behavior from being all to only the annotated. I only have annotated here, but a non-existent bean XML file means the same as it's not there. So it has to have a beans XML file for CDI to be activated. And that took a while for me to figure out, but when I've done, it's fairly simple, because you just create this video thingy. Don't add it to Git. So, and now I can look at it, and you can see IntelliJ actually respect this, and since I'm on Jakarta EE 10 or higher than 8, it will see that hey, CDI 4. It will generate the correct version of the file with the correct namespace. If I had a Jakarta EE 8 application, it would generate the CDI version for 8 with the JCP.org namespace. So this is pretty good idea. And you see, it's empty, non-annotated or anything. And just by adding this file, I can now redeploy this application, and it should be able to say, but it still says how to EE8, right? And that's the dynamic things. This is stuff I have in the database. In my case, it's just a text saying EE8. So I can just update the database, and it will say the correct thing. So I can go to the database here, edit data, say howdy Jakarta EE. Let's see. Then, and then where's the submit?
So, Ivan,
Yes.
you have to specify the discovery as either all or annotated?
No, if it's not there, it's annotated.
Okay,
The default is annotated.
okay.
So for me, it was just a text saying Jakarta EE 10, but it could have been some dynamic stuff that were built to be something that was only running on 8.
So it's just the existence of the that XML file matters.
Yes, it has to be there. And if you rely on it being all, you have to specify it all. Otherwise, it's annotated. Yeah. So I know I did that fairly quickly, but that was because I have one more demo that I created this afternoon. I actually did it while I was sitting up there and Garrett was talking. But Jakarta 11.
Listening intently?
Yeah. so Jakarta 11 is coming hopefully before summer, maybe after summer next year. We are trying to set a fixed release cadence for Jakarta EE, which is initially was 6 months after a Java SE LTS, but probably more like 6 to 9 months after an LTS, probably maybe up to 12, but hopefully 9. So we're aiming for 9. So I would say end of June or something is what I hope for. You never know with these kind of releases, but if we kind of establish that, we will have a 2-year release cadence of Jakarta EE, which was being very good. Predictability is good. What we're doing with 11 is raise the API source level to 21. So we're compiling everything to 21. There may be some APIs that compile to other versions, but that is kind of, if you depend on something that is on 21, you have to recompile the API. If you're not, you can stay on 11 if you want. It doesn't matter. Java is backwards compatible, but we will run on 21. So application developers, if you use Jakarta EE APIs, you will have to be on 21, and the implementations will be on 21 as well. So we're kind of taking a big step forward here.
Yeah, I feel like that's the opposite of like, before it's spun off and like going back, I feel like Jakarta was always lagging behind. So that's really
Yeah, now we're leading the pack.
that's really good to hear.
Yeah. So this is a new specification coming in Jakarta 11. We're happy to add the Jakarta data. And this will standardize the repository pattern for data access. And this is exactly what Spring Data does. And for this one, I have a demo. So if you remember the persistence, I'll get rid of the database here. The persistent stuff here, it's kind of, yeah, it's readable, but yeah, we don't like it. So what we can do here is, I have sort of the same application. It's just, it's /API. It's a standard application. I have a greeting resource that just lists all greetings, and I can add a greeting. In this application, I have it's on Jakarta 10, and I'm using Jakarta data 10 beta 2. Since it's not a part of the platform, I have to add the dependency, and I'm using the Open Liberty as an implementation of Jakarta data. So this one is not running on Glassfish, it's on Open Liberty, and I'll just run the application first before I start breaking things. And if I just run it, I can use the Maven Liberty run from their the plugin there, and it's very fast up and running. And if I access this one, you can see it's an empty list of greetings because it's just a hard-coded empty list. So let's access the database and do some fun with this one. So to do this, the first thing I'm going to do is to add a new interface, and I'm calling it a greeting repository. So far, it's very simple similar to the one you remember I had in this this Dux repository, only that this was a class, right? So that's the first difference. I don't create a class for the repository anymore. I can do an interface. I could do a class to extend this this interface, but this is kind of the simple. And what I'm going to do here is take this repository and extend an interface called CRUD. CRUD repository. And this credit repository should be handling the greetings, and the primary key is of type long. So that's how I define this repository. The other thing I do to make it discoverable is I annotate it with @repository. So by doing this, I've just created this interface. I can now start using this. And if in this find all method, rather than returning a empty list, I want to inject this greeting repository. So let's inject greeting repository like this. And rather than returning an empty list, I'm returning greeting repository dot, and then you see I have the find all method there. So it's all there for me. So I'll use find all, and this returns a stream. So I'll just make the two lists for it. And then for the add method, rather than just return a response and say, hey, I created an entity. Let's say I'll create an entity, and I'll add here, and I'll do the greeting repository plus greeting repository dot save method, and I'll pass in the greeting I'm getting here, and I'll pull out the ID it gets from the database and just log it there in the response. So see, I already have the save method and the find all methods. So let's run this one and see how this behaves. So the first one should be empty because I haven't added anything yet. But if I go here and just add this one here by using, I use the HTTP, is it a little bit down here, HTTP post to 90 ID Dukes API greetings, and I'm just echoing in this JSON string. So I'll just send it in, see if it responds. So it got a 200, and if I now say a list there, you see I have a message in the database. So that's how easy it is to do persistence now. Just create that interface. What I also can do is say that I add another one that I don't call Duke, but I call what do you call it? Miss Duke. So I have two of them. What if I now want to query on name rather than find all or ID? Like it's not the primary key that's ID, but I want to query on name. Let's see how I can do that. So I'll just stop it, and I'll go in to the repository, the greeting repository. And I'll simply here create a method that returns a optional of greeting. And I'll find by name ignore case. And I'll take the string name in like this. So just add a method to the interface. I don't implement anything. I just write something with a kind of language. Everybody understands what this is going to do, right? And I save it and I run it. So we're going to just query here again. It's going to be empty because it's emptied every time I start the server. And then I'm going to echo in this Duke here. You see it's here. And if I then take Miss Duke in as well, I have these two, and now I want to query and just find Duke. So what I can do then is, of course, I have to create a REST endpoint for that. So I'll have to do it again. But if I go to the greeting resource here and add a method, and this one I've cheated a little bit. So I'll have this find by name. So it has a get, it takes in a name. It says the name here, and it uses this find by name ignore case, and just prints not found if it's not there. So I'll just start the server again. So if there is nothing there, if I now go here and say Duke, it just said not found, right? Because it's not there yet. But if I go and echo in misDuke and then Duke, and then we can query the list, see that it's there, and now see will it give a message from Duke, and it does. So that's how Jakarta data does it. It's just by adding a simple interface method without any implementation. That's pretty cool. That's coming in E11. Jakarta MVC is not going to be a part of E11, but it will be added to the spec as a prospective specification. That gives it a little bit more class than the others because it's very ready. It's version 3.0 now, so it's kind of there. When people demand it, it will be added. So it's ready for use, and it will add a simple MVC on top of Jakarta REST with the @control orientation and a little bit other fancy stuff there. Jakarta NoSQL will remain a standalone specification that's standardized in integration with NoSQL databases. It's not ready yet. It's kind of not deemed mature enough for inclusion in the platform, but it's there. It works. So maybe in later versions it will be added. Same as actually with Jakarta RPC. They're not as far ahead as NoSQL, but this is standardized in gRPC within Jakarta EE. We have Jakarta config, which is in progress. It's been for a while. We're kind of waiting for them to do something. I see they have weekly meetings and are at least getting some. I think they're thrown away three trials of doing it, but they're working on it. That's kind of standardized portable configuration. Have some injection of properties in some way or the other. So to sum up, Jakarta E9 has been around for a couple of years. What that did was kind of disrupt the ecosystem around Java with the Java X to Jakarta namespace change. Most of us are in some way going to be affected or are affected about it, but I think it's actually a good thing now that we see it back.
Between which versions did that happen?
Between 8 and 9. Okay. So Jakarta 10 is a lot of new specifications. That's the one that's out there. It has a lot of implementations. We get new compatible implementations almost every week. So there are lots of implementations out there. And you can also pick and choose and do smaller versions of it, such as Core Profile. That's brand new in Jakarta 10. 10 is compiled to 11, but runs on 17. If you want to know more about Jakarta EE, you go to jakarta.ee. If you want to read about Jakarta EE from a little bit less formal tone, you go to my blog, which is on agiljava.eu. I write weekly updates. I also write a small update from each of these JUG meetings. And the demo code for the migration application is Jakarta EE Duke. It's on my GitHub. You will also find the data, Duke's data there, which is the Jakarta data demo. If you want to learn about Jakarta EE, sort of what I've talked about here today, but a little bit more detail, and have a LinkedIn Learning account, you can do the course I have on LinkedIn and get a fine certification on your profile there. If you don't have a LinkedIn Learning account, I know in Columbus, if you have a library card, you have a free LinkedIn Learning. I don't know how it's in New Jersey, but if you don't have, ping me afterwards and I may give you a free link. With that, I thank you for listening and hope you enjoyed it.
That's what we talked about certs earlier. I think the latest cert, if I'm not mistaken, is 7 in that Oracle gave out. Do you think the Jakarta organization or Oracle will release a new certification for Jakarta at any point?
So the question is whether there will be any Jakarta EE certifications in the future. And
I think the last one pretty old.
Yes, so Oracle will not do it because it is up to us to do it. We did a try to do a little check how much it would cost. Right now we don't have budget for it, so it's a bit of a big take on for us to do. We're a small organization, but it is on the radar, and we would like to do it. So sometime in the future, it's definitely on the map, but we don't know exactly when.
Just curious.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, I've got two questions here, and one of them is still about beans.
Yes.
And let's give this one more try here, okay? I'm gonna read it almost verbatim. In some cases, class path stand for beans, in some cases is tricky because beans can be in transitive Maven dependencies, but they must be eligible for injection. So the person who posted this is curious, how does it work under the hood?
Okay, so how does it work under the hood with scanning? I don't know how the internals in these application servers actually work, but if an library you're using as a transitive dependency or it's somewhere in your application has the correct CDI annotations, and your application has the discovery mode that allows them to be discovered, so you can configure whether they should be discovered or not. Then the runtimes will handle it for you. For the specific details of how it handles, I would have to refer to the CDI specification. I think it's fairly good documented there.
Okay, and one more question. In case of field injection, which
Yes.
he assumes is lazy, how your dependency injection intercept calls, how your dependency injection intercept calls to the field. He uses aspect J. Are there any better alternatives?
Yes. So what we're doing is we're using.
Repeat the question?
Yeah. So the question is about field injection or what injection mechanism we're using. They're using aspect J. So in Jakarta EE we use CDI. That's our injection mechanism, or Java X inject. So that's the JSR 330. That was the inject annotation. And in Jakarta EE, we use CDI as the injection mechanism, and that is context and dependency injection. So that is a kind of a overkill to just replace aspect J with it, but that's kind of where you're. Regarding field injections, I'm one of those that are not religious on it has to be constructor or field, but the Jakarta EE and CDI supports both. It's up to your program and install. It doesn't matter for the technology. Thank you very much. I guess we will go to some slide here.
Yep. Just at the down arrow, right? Yeah. There we go. Right. So thank you, Ivar. I don't know, those of you who know, I'm on one of the committers for both the Jakarta Data and Jakarta NoSQL. So I was a bit disappointed about the vote for the NoSQL not being ready. But you know, it's all good. At some point I can share, I think I have a repository on an example how to use Jakarta NoSQL. It's a beer database. You know, it's got real beer in there. I mean, not physical beer, but you know, the information is about real beer. So anyway, with this, all right, so let's do, usually this is the end part where we talk about what's coming up. So we have upcoming events. There's what's going on this week is the Oracle Cloud World 2023 in Las Vegas. And this is where the panel was with Sharat Chander and Chad Ara. I forget his last name. But anyway, there were four guys there talking about the JDK 21 release. QCon San Francisco is early next month.
No dedicated job.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother story. I was not gonna go there, but that's a whole, we'll just leave it at that. So to Scott's point, I think Oracle would like to do regional Java 1 conferences. So we're gonna definitely make sure we get one here. So New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, you know, all that. So anyway, QCon San Francisco, InfoQ is owned by C4 Media, and they have these QCon events. The last one was in New York back in June. I'm happy that I'm going to this one next month as a dedicated reporter. So you can look for my daily summaries on InfoQ. EclipseCon is another big one. It's back in person. I think this is the first time, right, Ivar? It's back in person.
No, it's the.
It was the second time.
We were in 20. Yeah, last year was the second.
Oh, it was the first. Okay, that's right. Yeah. I know it was virtual for a couple of years. So it's in Ludwigsburg, Germany. Let's see, JCon World 2023, the week of Thanksgiving. I did have a talk accepted there, and I made sure it's not going to be on Thanksgiving Day. So, and Jakarta 1 2023. This is hosted by the Eclipse Foundation, and if you join, it's all virtual. You'll see Ivar and Tanya Obradovic, and I'm happy to be on the program committee for that as well. We're in the process of selecting talks for that. Now, what I don't have here are some of the other ones that are overseas, like DevOps. I think DevOps Belgium's coming up, DevOps Morocco. I just recently learned there was a DevOps in the United States, but we need more of those, but it's only because there was only one. So anyway, so that's that. Upcoming meetings for us, we have the rest of the year scheduled with speakers. We have Matt Rabel from Okta on October 18th. Now, this is a Wednesday. Matt is making the rounds between Philly here in New York. So Wednesday, and then there are going to be at least 2 different talks. I think the RESTful Web Services talk is for New York. I don't know what Philly has selected yet. And then we have Brian Demers talking about developer productivity engineering. This is something from Gradle, and this will be on the 14th. And then we have Ronald de Heiser, and he is the creator of a utility called Job Runner. It's a background distribution. It's a nice little tool. It's version 6.3.1 is the latest. And how did I know that? Because I follow his stuff too, just like I do yours. Yeah. So anyway, so Ronald was able to come to the United States, and he's definitely committed to being here on the 12th of December. Let's just hope there's no snow. And he's working to see with New York, and hopefully he can go there as well while he's here in the States. All right, and we have some other folks we'd like to have talk. You can see their names right there. And let's see what else we got. All right, friends of Java, the Garden State Java group. I think I missed one. There we go. So the Atlanta folks were meeting tonight. Okay, so they had their talk. Tomorrow, the Chicago group has Java 21 and beyond with Anna Maria Mahalsadou. I think that's how you pronounce it. So anyway, and then on Thursday, the Kansas City Jug has Billy himself, who's actually one of the organizers of the Kansas City Jug, who is going to present Java to Java 21 and beyond. And then New York Java SIG next week on Thursday, The Secret Life of Maven Central. And then the Boston Java Users Group, formerly known as New England, they have their talk on October 12th. As a matter of fact, they had this month's talk last week. So, all right, so enough of that. So we do have licenses of IntelliJ. I think we're going to give away 2 this month because we have extra, because we didn't have a meeting in August. And we also have, we're going to give out the hoodie. As most of you know, we are part of the microprofile working group. So we're on the steering committee. And then, with the budget that we have, they send nice items like that. So please put your names in there for that. Maybe can we do the thing that Jean did for the hoodie? And we can do the other by email?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have we'll do it by number?
Yeah.
Okay. So Jean Boyarsky, from the
Stand for it.
oh yeah, right. So Jean Boyarsky had something that worked real well and was real easy. Okay. So as she said it, we all know how to count. So all right, so we'll start. Mike, your number
1.
Okay, let's see, we'll go.
Well, you only say your number if you want to share, if you want, right?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
So and what's that? Oh, Skippy, okay. So let's see. So 1, 2, 3, 3. You were 4, but not okay. And the young man on the New York Yankees shirt, you're number 4. This is for a raffle. We're counting. Okay. 5.
Call out, yes.
6.
A number, yeah.
Okay, we'll Okay. Young lady behind Ivar and Garrett. So where we leave off? 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 4, 5, 6, 7. You're 7. You're number 7. This is, yeah. Scott, you want to be part of this? Okay. No. Okay. Okay, so we have 11. All right. So Barry, why don't you run? This is for the hoodie. All right, and you're gonna.
I used to see G do this all the time. I would do
It was much easier when Gene. did it.
Yeah, I know. That's because I'm doing it. So that's all.
It's because that crowd could count.
Well, no, because she facilitated it better than I did.
And the winner is 6.
6. Who's number 6? All right. So just afterwards, come see me. I have a few sizes available here, so you can pick out the one. They run kind of big. So,
Gene also throws out candy.
so, all right, so we're gonna run our usual thing afterwards. So I don't want to give out people's emails on our form, on our Google form. So, yes, that's right. So, all right, so with that, first of all, thanks, Garrett and Ivar for coming out. And so, this was awesome. So we look forward to seeing you at conferences coming up and, so, but, so without further ado, have a good night. We'll see you up.
No beer?
Oh, yes, thank you.
No beer slide?
Oh, wait a minute. All right, yeah, we got to have the, obligatory beer slide. All right, so, thanks for coming out tonight. There might be some pizza left, but then we'll see you in October. All right. Yeah.
And also on the scale. And just like, I need this hand sanitizer, not that someone put it in your mouth. Yeah, all kinds of products.
So I'll just stop sharing here now.
Yeah, I'm good, yeah. So CPI pipe itself, it's part of the
CDI specification.
but it's just restricted.
Yeah.
Because there's no separate, yeah. So, yeah.